Hey guys, State Zayner here, and today we have another episode on the Bonsai Apprentice. I'm going to be working on my Japanese maple, cleaning it up, getting it ready for spring. I know, I just want to show you guys what I'm doing, the process and that, and give you guys a little bit of background before we get started. So I'm going to flip it around. We're going to take a circle, I'll spin it around, you guys can see it. And then I'll talk a little bit about what I'm doing, why I'm doing it, what I'm looking for long term. All right, so let's get to it. I'll say this at the beginning of every video, but please like, share, subscribe. If you really like the content, please donate. It'll help me a lot when I get to Japan, just living and everything else. So all the links for those in the description, or, like, share, subscribe, do all that good jazz for me. So without further ado, let's flip it around. Let's show you guys what I'm working with here. All right, everyone. So here's the tree. This is kind of the front. It's more like right here. So I got this nice cascade branch, a couple other branches, all the way up to the apex. We're at the back of the tree and back around to basically the front. So a couple things I want to do with this tree today, other than just thinning out. You always get a little bit of dieback. We had a pretty brutal winter. It got really, really cold. We got some branches that were just shaded out that aren't going to come back. So keep that in mind. We'll take those out too. Those are basically underneath branches, everything else. Yeah, we have a little bit of stuff just weak in the back too. But for the most part, we're not having any major problems with the tree or anything like that. So what we'll really be defining after that is this apex region. So we'll wire some of these down, thin it out a little bit, get it, nice and tight up here. And then the other big thing I want to do is bring this branch kind of down and over more so that we can start to build another pad around this deadwood to frame it. So, sometimes you just get these bits that don't look great. They're dying back and you have to cut them back. So what we'll do, so when you do this, put where you want your scissors to be, and then go and cut that section off. When we come back and talk about thinning out, we'll talk more about where to cut on a juniper, but for now, just remember any of these pieces here, you can just come in and cut out and be fine. So basically what we're going to do is do that, cut out all those pieces that didn't make it through the winter. Like I said, we had a really brutal winter, and this was one that was just buried in the ground and frozen there, and we couldn't really do anything to help it. So we're just going to do that, clean out all those dead bits, and then come back and we'll start thinning and wiring, and I'll show you guys the process of that. We have these long elongating tips here. There we go. And what we want to do is cut these off to allow for the buds in the back here to excel and grow. Okay, now there's a couple reasons we want to do this. Is to keep the tree healthy, keep the tree in really good shape, but also we want to miniaturize the tree, right? We want to push out the growth back in. And so if we always let these pieces elongate, then we're going to run into problems. Okay, now this is not the same as pinching a tree, which if you've seen that term, this is not what we want to do on a juniper or a pine, okay? We just want to remove the strongest shoots out on the edge and have that forced back, okay? We don't want to do this to every branch. We don't want to take off the tips of every branch, okay? And there's some branches that we won't take the tips off at all because we want them to continue to elongate, like this branch here, which will eventually fill out this space right in here. Also in our cleaning process, once we get it going, in our thinning process, I'll show you, I'll work on an individual pad once we get there. But we want to clean anything growing directly down and get that out of the way too, so we keep our lines nice and flat as we work up the tree, okay? So let me go ahead. We're going to throw some wire on the top. We're going to guide wire that over. Like I said, it's not anything too amazing. And then we'll come back to a pad that really needs to start getting worked and refined, and show you how we get rid of those tips and we clean off the stuff on the bottom, and how that will really help the tree set up for the long run, okay? So let me get that stuff done and then we'll come back. All right, everybody. So we're going to start with this branch here. And the reason I'm starting with this branch, because even though it's a back branch, is just because it has every example of really what I want to talk about, okay? So you can see this wire here. We cut out a dead piece. That's the only living piece. I might get rid of the whole thing. Yet to be decided, all right? You see a lot of these longer tips on every one. And then you see that there's a branch literally growing, I'm going to use the paper method here, right on top. So this branch looking above, all right, so that's what it looks like with the paper. I remove it, there you can see all that branch underneath there, okay? Same thing with this one here, even though we already kind of talked about where this one will end up. Right now I still have branches right underneath this branch and all of this up here and the apex all the way down here, okay? So it doesn't get a lot of light. So we need to make sure that whatever I do now with this branch is going to be conducive to mirroring the growth that I put on last year, okay? So I just used a piece of paper here to give this definition just a little bit more, okay? So you see I have this nice gap here where originally I intended for this to be a pad and for this to be a pad, okay? And it didn't quite work out initially when I did it, just due to not having enough growth and having to give it more space. And then, like I said, we got this branch, we have a lot more apex, and this is also really grown out, okay? So when you come in to thin and to think about moving the branches, okay, we need to think about how we want them set and long term, how do we want them to look. So realistically, all right, if I want to keep these two branches, they have to come out. There's no other explanation. If they stay there, they won't get light and they will die eventually. Okay, so when I move them, I'll have to move them out. All right, these will have to come together. Okay, and then this branch here will have to go somewhere as well. Okay, so maybe in this regard, it's like this branch, if we drop this pad lower, all right, which I think I probably will, but if we drop, because it has a little bit more of these tips that I can angle and do stuff with, if we drop these lower and let them elongate out into this space, that'll work a lot better for us when we lay this pad here, okay? We also have to remember when we're working this pad back that this will be thinned out as well. So if this comes back enough, these don't have to come as far out and compete with this space over here with these as well, okay? Now I'm also looking at how many branches are in this pad, and we have quite a few, and we have some thick one. We have like a thick one too here. So I could remove this whole piece and leave this as a pad and just swing these over. All right, so there's lots of options to think about when you do this, okay? And there's lots of things to think about long term. Maybe I just remove parts of this. All right, if I remove this section and I build a pad with these three, okay, then I'm still, I'm leaving it. Am I going to be leaving enough room for a denser foliar pad? I don't know, right? These are the questions you have to think about and work through the process of, okay? So I think for now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to look at the front, and I'm going to take this paper down and look, okay? So you can see that back branch. Now, if I make two separate pads out of that, okay, will that give me enough density? I think it will. So what I'm probably going to do is drop one closer to the pot, leave this one up higher, and then swing over, and start to fill in that space, okay? So, but before we do that, we need to thin out these tips. And this is really, really what I want to show. So I got my shears. Okay, so we're going to focus right here on this tip shoot right here sticking out, okay? So you see how it gets very tight at the end, okay? So we want to come in and cut that out, okay? So that we redistribute energy back down this branch and get back budding back here, okay? If we're looking from above, same thing. You see this long shoot that's coming out here. It's got all this stuff right here. We're gonna come back, we're gonna take it back to about 2 on the shoot, okay? We're gonna take that out, and that shortens that. All right, but what we don't wanna do is come to this one and remove that, and remove this, and remove this one, and remove that, and this, all right? You just wanna do it on the strongest of strong shoots. So here's another great example, okay? Very strong shoot, my scissors, remove it, okay? There we go. Strong shoot, all right? So, you know, we're removing very small bits and pieces of a very strong branch. And what that's gonna do is, like I said, force back budding and get our pads tighter, okay? It's gonna stop that elongation process. So here's a great example of a fairly dense branch, okay? I'll have to go through and thin this out a little bit, but then we have this long shoot that just comes out, okay? And I'm gonna take it really all the way back to here, okay? When you cut junipers, you don't wanna come, let's see, you don't wanna come just straight across. All right, so like, if I wanna cut this tip off here, I don't wanna cut foliage like that, okay? I wanna come in, I wanna cut on the stem of the foliage, okay? If I'm coming across, don't cut like this and leave that. Come straight in, right on the wood, or the woody part, okay? There it goes. Okay, so see how the difference is? I'm cutting from the stem of the branch and not the foliage itself, okay? So cut it like that and not straight across the foliage, okay? Is I'm gonna start actually at my lowest branch and work my way up, because this is always gonna be the weakest branch on the tree. So it needs the least amount of thinning, and it should get theoretically the least amount of work. And eventually I want this to be a very strong section all the way across and be a big foliage pad, okay? So with that vision in mind and how I want to build the rest of the tree, I need to make sure that this is staying super healthy and has more foliage or equal to the rest of the tree, which right now, certain pads in certain areas of the tree have a lot more. Okay, so we're just gonna keep doing that, work through, remove weak inside foliage, thin out certain places, and start to position a little bit more, okay? Most of this tree is already wired from last year, so I won't need to do a lot of that. So let's just continue working. I'll keep you guys updated as we move along, but I'm gonna come back and start on this lower pad here, cleaning up stuff that's hanging straight down, and then pruning some of those tips to get stronger back budding here, and pulling maybe some of these out and letting them elongate more and get it a little bit flatter so it gives it more area to get sunlight, okay? So without that, let's get to, I'm just gonna work and I'll show you guys what I have when I come back. But I wanted to show you guys because cutting off some of these big branches or bending some of these branches can feel very daunting at times, okay? So I really just want to show you guys kind of what I'm doing and the reason I'm doing it, and that you shouldn't really be scared to cut some of these branches. So first things first, I want to take a look at this branch here. So this is a long, very straight branch, which with a decent amount of foliage towards the end. And you can tell I really didn't clean this out because I'm going to cut this one off. And the reason is that this one is going to come into this space at a later date. And I want to go ahead and get rid of this now. Okay, but I'm going to make a gin out of this. So I'm just going to cut all the foliage off here. Okay, so we're going to cut that off. And you can see just how much that actually was. Alright, with the wire on it still, I just removed that so I could put it. And then what we'll do is we will gin this, and I'll show you that process too when we get there, okay? The other thing, going off the same branch, with this one, with this down here, is this one is also very compact. And why I'm doing this is because this piece right here is going to come into this space. And what I'm going to do is actually gin this piece as well, okay? But this piece, I'm afraid, will die if I do this too quickly. So what I'm going to be doing is going through and thinning this out, almost probably taking about 60% of it, and then seeing how this piece reacts. And then if this continues to grow, if that piece continues to grow, I'll go and take out another 20, and by the end of the year have this whole piece ginned out, ready to go. Okay, so that's kind of the game plan with this one. And then I'm gonna be cutting out, see if we can get in here better. All right, so I've tied back these two pieces, which will be coming out, and this whole piece will be swinging over, and we will be rewiring this piece under here once I get that swung over and this thinned out, so I know how far I have to extend it and hopefully not have to cover this too much. Okay, this branch is going to drop down into this space where my hand is underneath. The whole apex is also going to drop down, so I took all the wire off, put a guide wire, and what we're going to do is drop the whole thing down. With that in mind, I'm going to do those changes. We're going to guide wire it, pull it all down, put it where it needs to go, and then I will come back and show you the final results of that. Okay, but I just want to show you guys that I made this big cut. You know, don't be afraid. If you have too many branches, sometimes you got to make that cut. You know, this piece coming back, you can really see it now. It was going to go roll over. This piece was just in the way of this and this. So this is going to come down, you know, probably I might even guide wire it down. I think it has enough to hold though with the wire. But we'll bring that down onto this, keep it small, keep this compact, and we'll be just ready to go. You know, it's going to look really good. So, you know, there's not a lot going on back here right now, but once we pull this apex down, and I'm going to show you guys what I'm going to do with that, we'll be filling in this area. This is going to come in, fill some of this area. So we got stuff going on. So next is going to be doing this, cutting this piece out, bringing those two down so that this isn't interfering with these, and we'll be ready to go. So let me get to that. I'll come back. I'll show you guys what I've got, and that will be it. All right, guys. So we are back. So I tightened all those. I ginned this piece. I put things in the final position. Okay. And this is kind of, so with the front being right there, this is kind of what we came up with, okay? So you can see that the apex is still really straggly, and that's okay. I went and did a hard prune on all this and brought the whole thing down. So some of the foliage that was up there, like this piece here, is now in between other pieces, and some of the weaker pieces that were just circling have to extend out. So in the next growing season, we'll see this apex really start to develop. But I think as a whole, the asymmetry in the tree is coming along really nice. I like the weird movements in the branches that all kind of swoop down, and I like that we filled out this bottom section, and you can see kind of the different layers starting to happen really clearly throughout the tree. So it's coming along. It's starting to look really, really good. Like I said, this section still looks really full because this back section there is still coming in. So you can see it with it, and it kind of just blends at a certain point. But that'll go away eventually. So just keep that in mind. The next step for this is going to be probably the next video afterwards. It's going to be cleaning the bark, putting lime sulfur on all the gens, and cleaning up this pot. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video. I know I didn't really show a lot of like the process of how to do a lot of this, but I just want to show you guys like this, you know, a couple hours of spring cleaning and how that really, you know, you can transform a tree pretty that you've been working on. This is kind of like the second styling of this tree, and then this is, you know, just completing some iterations and helping it get to be even better over time. So things I want to do long term with this tree that let's talk about that is I kind of want to fill in this section here with something, whether that means I have to graft something on to one of these branches, pull something from the apex down, is yet to be determined, but it kind of needs something. I don't even think that this branch coming back will be able to fill this hole. It's, you know, I might need something to grow here. So we will wait and see. Fill out this apex obviously is a whole nother story, but thinking about long term, I'm gonna wait to get another pot. Whenever I repot this, I want to put it in a smaller container. This was the only one I had at the time, but it's rather big for this rather small tree. I want something that may, you know, maybe is a quarter, so something maybe like right there, pot wise. You know, I want kind of extension on both sides of the pot to a greater degree. So if I cut out, you know, probably like right there over, you know, give me a third of the size. But I didn't have that pot option. But when I do get a smaller pot here in a couple years, as this tree gets closer and closer to either being show worthy or whatever, I eventually do want to pull this back down and pull all this foliage here closer to the pot. But it's really no use doing that until we know where the pot's going to be, how big the pot's going to be, stuff like that. So, you know, just things to think about down the road as you're styling too, and, you know, envisioning where this tree is going to go in the future. So, what I'm going to do is wheel it to a wall. We'll do one slow-mo of it, and then we will have an outro. So I hope you guys enjoyed that video. Let's talk about some aftercare. So I'll be spraying this regularly with some water when I water it, and then at night I'll spray it again just to keep all the foliage moist, keep it wet so it doesn't dry out while it's healing. And other than that, there's not really a lot of aftercare for it. It's pretty healthy. It's got a good root base, so looking long term, it should put on a ton of growth this year and really start to flesh out come maybe midsummer. We have to come back and look at it, but and, you know, clean up some of the stuff that's really grown. But realistically, that's all we really have. So if you like this video, please like, share, subscribe, donate to my GoFundMe if you can. It really will help me get to Japan when we can international travel. So thank you guys so much for watching, and sayonara.